Jay here for Stretford, Paddock, and this is a Leicester City preview. Joining me today are Joe Smith, birthday boy.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Jay.
How many candles, Joe?
What?
How many candles on your birthday cake
I like
today,
two.
mate?
One that says 2, one that says 7.
There you go.
Thanks.
It's mad that me and you are the same age. Also joining me is Alex Baggers.
The other 27-year-old. The 3 27-year-olds. Who'd have thought it?
It's incredible, isn't it? Just 3 big, sexy 27-year-olds doing a preview.
And also, yes, exactly.
And
also via Skype, someone who's not 27, James Young. How you doing, mate?
All right.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of reaction we want, just a bit of normality. Let's move
I'm
on.
drunk.
I think you are. I think you've been on the birthday beers already.
I had a few Midori Sours last night and I'm still feeling it.
Right. This is it. This is the game, the decider, the Champions League decider. If we don't lose, we get top 4, at least top 4, and we go into next season's Champions League. Because let's face it, even though the Europa League is the best competition in the world, it would be nice to have a bit of a change. Alex, I'll start with you. I know we're going to get into the teams later. We know there's been sort of injuries and fatigue.
Yep.
Just going into it, how confident are you feeling going into this one that United can get over the line?
It's what we didn't want. We didn't want it. We looked at this 3 weeks ago when it looked at Southampton, Palace, and then West Ham. We kind of thought, do you know what? If we can get 2 wins out of that, maybe 7 points, we'll be home dry, which we probably would have been, or it'd been a lot more comfortable going into the Leicester game. But it's shootout essentially between us and Leicester, and Leicester have been poor, but at the same time it's essentially their cup final. You never know what's going to happen when it comes down to that, so not entirely confident, but hoping with an extra day's rest, which we've not had into the other games, I think we'll do all right.
Joe, how do you look at the sort of last few weeks? Do you get a sense that the season may be unravelling, or is that being a little bit melodramatic because we've still only drawn 2 games and lost a semi-final where we had a weakened team?
Well, I think it has been a bit melodramatic. I think it's funny that only 1 win in 4. I think it's always the case in it. When you're on an unbeaten run, it's easy to frame it sometimes as 1 win in this, but when it's going well, it's no losses in this. Like it's just easy to do it like that. And I think United have been on a brilliant run that in the league they are still on. Obviously 2 draws in the last 3, or only 1 win in the last 4 in all competitions. However you want to frame it, like I said, isn't particularly great, but you can always lose a semi-final to Chelsea. Chelsea, who had won 12 of their previous 15 semi-finals in the FA Cup, let's not forget. And it's, I know they're not the best Chelsea team, but they were above us in the league at the time, and they're a decent side that have won the league within the last few years. So it's not like this is an awful Chelsea team. You can always lose a semi-final to Chelsea. Not that I'm happy with it, but it's not the worst result ever. Same thing goes for Southampton. A draw against Southampton isn't the end of the world. A draw against West Ham, who we've struggled against in recent years, isn't the end of the world. But when people are trying to frame it as though things are unravelling, it can look that way. But when you actually look at where we are and where we were at the start of even this last 10 days, we were 5th, points behind everyone on the same games played. Now we're 3rd on the same games played for the first time since I think October. We've been in the top 4. So depending on how you want to look at it, we're in the strongest position we've been in 8 months. And I think that's the way I'd like to look at things, especially when you consider the fact that we were never just going to win every game to the end of the season from lockdown, were we? We're always going to drop points. We're always going to lose some games. So obviously we have to beat Leicester now. And I'm not a big fan of the whole must not lose idea, because I just think it leads to players not trying to go for goals and sitting back, and we saw against Southampton that doesn't really work for this team. But I think it's unfair to say that the season's unravelling or that the wheels are falling off.
James, how do you sort of think Ollie's done this season? Because we're going into the last game in 3rd place. I know we don't know how it's going to turn out, but how do you think he's sort of managed the squad and managed the team this season? Do you think he's done a good job?
I think he's done really well, yeah. I think a lot of people don't give him credit. I mean, we had a massive injury crisis as well. If you go all the way back to the summer, I mean, he only really got, signings-wise, Wan-Bissaka, Dan James and Maguire, which probably wasn't enough really to get what he wanted. But in terms of how he's dealt with everything that's been going on, I mean, since the Burnley game, we haven't lost in January. We haven't lost since the Burnley game, which is kind of incredible, really. I mean, that is just a great run of form United have been on. And I think, like Joe was saying, this squad isn't quite there yet to win every single game since the break. We don't have the depth in the squad to be able to play 3 games a week. So it was kind of inevitable what was going to happen. But yeah, I mean, he's done a tremendous job. And compared to where the club was at the end of last season, I mean, the cover of United We Stand was No More Heroes, and there was the whole sort of thing around players that really didn't want to be at the club. The charlatans, the likes of Sanchez, the likes of Lukaku. He's done brilliantly in terms of getting rid of the dead wood and the players that don't want to be here. And now, even though the squad's maybe not as strong as it was at the end of last season, there's players in there you can tell that really want to play for United. The likes of Rashford, the likes of Martial, even, who's came under a lot of criticism. He started to drop back a bit deeper more. He started to create more chances. He started to get more involved in games, and it just seems to be a bit more positive around the club compared to last season. And I think finally it's getting back onto where it should be, because we've had managers in the past, the likes of Van Gaal, the likes of Mourinho, and it's always felt like there's something going on, something's not right. But I think under Solskjaer now, it seems like you can finally see where we're going to end up in 3-4 years' time if he gets the money in transfer windows.
No, I agree with all that 100%. Going into this game, Baggers, you mentioned the fact that we only need a draw. There's also Europa League. It feels like you've got a little bit of a safety net there. I mean, there's also the fact that Wolves could do us a favour. There's all these different sides. But do you have to forget all that and just go for it? Is that how you approach this game? Just go for the win. Treat this like almost like a cup. Ollie likened it to a cup final. He said we've lost 2 semi-finals. This is a cup final. Do you treat it like that and just go for it, or do you sort of play it a little bit more cagey? How do you think he's going to approach it?
I think it'll be a little more cagey, but at the same time, I think he has to go out to win. I think what he'll probably do, I mean, we'll go into my team, but I think he will kind of, it does play into our hands in terms of counter-attacking football. I think that's where it kind of does. We can sit back a little bit, absorb a bit of pressure. We don't need to score the goal. Let them come out, let them try and attack us. But at the same time, I think we have to go out in the mindset that we need to score goals and we need to win the game. And I think the first goal is going to be huge. I think that if we score first, it puts Leicester really on the back foot. They have to really come out and chase the game. But if they score first, it'll be very, very nervy for Manchester
United.
United.
You can imagine they score first, and next thing you know, it's like 75 minutes gone.
Yeah,
and you're like, how has this happened that we've got 15 minutes to score a goal here?
I think we've done that in the 2 games we've dropped points in,
Yeah.
and the Chelsea game as well. But we dropped points against Southampton where we went behind and didn't get going. We've not got going in the first half an hour in a lot of games recently. No. I think if that happens on Sunday and they get a goal, I think it's going to be a really horrible afternoon to watch football.
And the timing of the goal as well. The Chelsea goal, their first goal was just before half-time. The West Ham goal, their goal was just before half-time. It's notoriously a killer time to concede because you've done pretty well in the half and then all of a sudden it's 1-0 down at half-time, especially when they both came from mistakes like they did. So it depends on the timing of the goals, but like I said, that first goal is so massive against Leicester. If we score it, they've got a mountain to climb, and if they score it, it's just going to be cagey for the next 70 whatever minutes, depending on when they score. But yeah, it's a huge goal, that first goal.
I've done a couple of watch-alongs with you, and one thing you've always put it out is the slow starts we've had recently.
Yeah,
you mentioned it against Villa, against Palace, against Chelsea, obviously, where we just didn't get in the game and never really caught up with him. How much does that concern you recently? I know you were more positive in terms of our overall form, but we have been slow out of blocks over the last few games, and we've sort of got away with it in the league a little bit, but it does worry you.
Yeah, we saw it against Bournemouth, we saw it against Villa, we saw it against West Ham, we saw it against Palace, pretty much every game. We saw it against Tottenham. Yep. We've seen it almost every game since the restart with a sort of, without trying to compare us to the greatest sprinter of all time, Usain Bolt, that kind of out the blocks early, you're like, he's not very, there he is. And most of the time we've done that. Bournemouth, perfect example. Yeah. Out the blocks bad, by the end, running, looking over your shoulder to finish to cross the finish line.
Timing.
Yeah, exactly, perfect. But you can't always do that, and especially when the legs are more tired as time goes on. And James mentioned before, we don't have the depth where Solskjaer now is making the what's the word, sort of deal, in his head, the equation of, am I better to play worse players who are fully fit and fully fresh, or good players who are knackered? What team gives me the best chance of winning? Either way, it's not going to look pretty, is it? You've got likes of Pogba and Fernandes, and probably Greenwood as well, because he's played a lot more minutes. Maguire looked knackered against Chelsea, Matic as well. Do you play these players who are better but are clearly deteriorating physically and maybe mentally a little bit as well with just the pressure that's on them? Or do you play the likes of Lingard and Pereira and Fred and Phil Jones? I know he's unfit, but these sorts of players, knowing that they're fit but they aren't as good, and that's a difficult balance to sort of juggle for Ole, and it's something he has to do. And people talk about burnout and these players have played too many minutes. They're your two options: play your best team that is tired, or play a worse team that isn't. What's the best option? I don't know, but it seems as though Ole's going for the best team.
Yeah, we'll get into the starting 11s a little bit later. James, Joe mentioned pressure there. Do you feel that Ollie's under pressure? Do you feel that United are under more pressure than Leicester because maybe Leicester weren't expected to get top 4, or the fact that Leicester have sort of let this 14-point gap slip puts them under pressure? Who do you think is under the most pressure going into this game?
I think both are, to be honest. I think if Solskjaer loses and we don't get top 4, I'm not sure he will actually lose his job, because I think that the board are probably actually going to back him. I think they're listening to him speaking. I think there is a genuine sense that they're probably going to stick with Solskjaer even if United don't get top 4, because they can't just keep on sacking managers. But obviously there's always going to be pressure on United going into a game like this. I think it's big for Leicester as well, but I don't think the expectation was there for Brendan Rodgers to get a 3rd or 4th place finish at the start of the season. So I think they're probably going to come into this under less pressure. But for United, I mean, it's a lot, because a lot of our transfer policy this summer will be decided on this game. I mean, if we don't get 4th this season, it's going to be very difficult to attract the likes of Sancho, the likes of other players that we've missed out on before because we don't have Champions League football. So I think the pressure is going to be definitely on both managers. But I think as well, Leicester could play with a high pressure in terms of how we've seen that against Southampton and West Ham. 2 sides that aren't exactly very good footballing sides, but they like to press United high and put that high press on. And I think United, that is something they really need to work on, because we've seen that against weaker opposition, and it seems that we really shouldn't have any problems in beating. That's been a bit of an issue where they just sort of press really high on our strikers, and Southampton first started to do that, and that's what other teams have followed. So I think United really have to work on dealing with that. But also, I mean, if they can deal with that, they can put balls over the top, and I think that's the good thing about Leicester, is they play quite a high line, so it might suit into our sort of counter-attacking style. But at the same time, I don't think this is going to end 4-3. I think it's going to be probably decided by a single goal here and there, because of just how much there is riding on it. I mean, I've never seen a good cup final when there's been so much. I mean, look at the World Cup final in 2014 between Germany and Argentina. It was a shit game. It was 1-0 because there's too much on it. You never see really a good final, and this is going to be a similar thing, I think, because of just how much money's resting on it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it might be a little bit more cagey. We'll look at Leicester in a little while. James, I'll stay with you. Give us your predicted 11 for this game.
All right, so I think he's probably going to put a similar team out. I mean, he could do something weird and play the likes of Ted and Benji, but I just don't think he lacks the experience for a game like this. I think it would be inexperienced to Solskjaer to put youth out when they've never played a first-team game before. So I think he's going to go for De Gea in goal, as usual. I think it probably would be fair to stick with him towards the end of the season. He's not exactly been playing well, but I actually thought he played okay in the last game against West Ham. I thought he was definitely better than he was against Chelsea, although he did set quite a low bar for himself. But I think Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof, Maguire and Williams will probably be the back 4. Pogba and Matic in front of them, and Greenwood, Fernandes and Rashford as the 3, and Martial up front on his own.
Yeah, much Baggers, I'll go on to you. Strong team, as we probably expect.
Yeah.
Who have you gone for?
I've gone for a very similar team. There's not been anything said about Luke Shaw, but I do feel that Ollie's kind of kept it close and I think that if he's going to get him back in, I think now's the time to kind of, for as much as I think Luke Shaw was poor coming back after lockdown, I think that those couple of games beforehand, I think he really showed him and Rashford kind of had a partnership. So I know why Joe's smiling here, because I've gone David De Gea.
Is yours the same as mine?
Yes, it is. Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Lindelof, Maguire, Luke Shaw at left back, and then midfield of Matic and Pogba, and then front the 3 behind of Rashford, Bruno Fernandes, Mason Greenwood and Martial, who I don't think that front 5 can be changed at the minute, for as much as they are tired, for as much as there's anything else. I don't think you can change that. And you've gone for the same.
I've gone for the same team as Alex. Unbeknownst to me, that's why I was smiling.
Should have let you go first, it's your birthday.
He's kept his cards close to his chest surrounded Luke Shaw, hasn't he? Kept his close to his chebs, if you will. But the thing with that is, we know what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's favourite team to play is. We know that because he's played it 5 games in a row. Yeah. So if they're fit, that's going to be the team, isn't it? And obviously James has gone with Brandon Williams. Don't be surprised to see Brandon Williams if Luke Shaw isn't fit, because he hasn't been fit. But since lockdown has ended, we've played the same team in 5 different matches. If that team's fit, it's getting played, I think. Yeah. It's the biggest game of the season.
Well.
Or is it?
Or is it?
You know I hate arguing with people. It's one of my bugbears. But I've gone for something slightly different. I've gone
6-1-6.
Yeah, 6-1.
Which is
bold
14
strategy,
players,
and it may just
14
work.
players, but we think we'll get
without a
away with
goalkeeper.
Yeah, we don't need a goalkeeper. No, I've gone with David De Gea in goal. Brandon Williams purely because I don't think Luke Shaw's fit at left back. Lindelof and Maguire at centre back. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and then in midfield I've gone with McTominay, Fred, Pogba, and Bruno in a sort of diamond type formation that Ollie can sort that one out. you know.
Fuck it. They'll do it.
Right.
He's good at that.
Yeah, I just think that there was a lot of tired legs out there in midfield, especially. So I'm bringing McTominay and Fred back in, and also up top I've gone with the two, obviously, because there's only 2 players left, and I've gone with Greenwood and Martial. Now I love Marcus Rashford, and everyone will give me dirty looks and pellets in the comments. Why have you not gone with Marcus? He looked dead on his feet to me against West Ham. He did.
Yeah.
He just people just sort of ignore the fact he had a broken back. And then he came back and practically played every game.
Stepped on a crack.
Yep. And then every time he plays, he gives his all. He runs his heart out. He's one of those players that gives you that high energy. And I think it's catching up with him, not just physically, but mentally. He wasn't making the runs he usually makes. He didn't look sort of on his game. And I think that is just a complete fatigue. I'm taking him out of the equation.
For me, doing that, I think he does need a rest. And I think if we could drop him, we would. But I think what he'll probably do is start him, and then if he's struggling, bring him off after half an hour or so. I think that's more. I think I agree. And if it was middle of the season, I think if this was happening in March time where he needed the break, I think he would bring Marcus out of the team and maybe do something similar. Maybe Dan James starts, or maybe someone else in there. But I think with this last game, I think he plays him, hoping to get a couple of goals, score that first goal, and then I do think Marcus Rashford is probably very high up on the list of the people he brings off.
I'm a big fan of starting with your stronger team, when you need to rest players, getting ahead and then taking them off. But I just think it might be the other way around. That if we're chasing the game, Marcus with 15, 20 minutes to go, you could get a good 20 minutes out of him that's going to cause that defence all sorts of problems. Talking about defence, we'll look at Leicester. I'll start with you, Joe. When you look at this Leicester team, is it all about Jamie Vardy and stopping him, or do you think they've got quality elsewhere as well that you need to be wary of?
I think they've got decent quality elsewhere. I like Johnny Evans, but if you actually watch Leicester, he does make plenty of mistakes.
Don't let Adam McCullough.
I know,
say that,
I know Adam McCullough's head. And I was a big fan of Johnny
Rio
Evans.
and Vidic combined.
Yeah, exactly. I was a big fan of Johnny Evans at United. I thought he was good. I thought, that he would have a career at Man United. Obviously, that didn't happen. But I watched Leicester half a dozen times this season, and I've not watched a game where he hasn't made at least some mistake that if it was Harry Maguire at United, he would have got slugged off for. And I still think he's a good defender, because I think good defenders still make mistakes. But I'm not so completely worried that he's this imperious defender that can stop Martial, Rashford, and Greenwood on the day. Soyuncu looks like he might be injured. Is that still the case?
Suspended, and he got sent off against Bournemouth, I think.
Okay, that's it. I knew because Morgan came back in the last game, didn't he? Madison again, another one who's a doubt, I believe.
Madison's out. Madison's done for the season.
So
they are missing some key players,
aren't they? Key players, aren't they? I think they've got good players. Pereira's good. Again, is he fit? Also out, isn't
last game, so
there's a lot of their best players.
Is it just about Jamie Vardy because he's the only one fit?
Well, that's what I'm sort of slowly getting to the fact that it kind of is. Ndidi, I believe, is available. He certainly played in the last match.
Yeah.
I like Ndidi a lot, but he's not the player to win you a match. I don't think he's a great player in a system. Their centre backs are okay. Their midfield is okay, especially with that Madison who doesn't tend to perform in the big games, and I can say that because he's not playing, so he can't prove me wrong, which is maybe a slightly unfair assessment of him. But again, like I said, in the half a dozen matches I've seen of them this season, he's yet to impress me. I think it's about stopping Vardy. And we've seen with the likes of Danny Ings pickpocketing Paul Pogba. I know he didn't score, but he set that goal up and created that goal. We've seen with Antonio the other day, again it was a penalty, but he still scored the goal. We have struggled to stop those men. Giroud, we struggle to stop. I know they're not the same mould, but we can see an obvious target that's going to cause us problems, and we still can see goals to that target. So I think it's all about Vardy. And even in the game, going back a couple of years when he had the chance to break Van Nistelrooy's record, everything would have been going into don't let him break that record. Still broke the record. Yeah. Because we do struggle against the obvious target. It's not like, I'm sure another player could score for Leicester, but if we stop Jamie Vardy, I think we'll get top 4.
Do you remember when we played him? Was it 5-3 when we had Falcao? And I remember
Di Maria scored.
Yeah, and I remember he got that penalty. Vardy, didn't he? He got the penalty from Raphael. I remember saying, he's never a Premier League footballer. He's conning a living, Jamie Vardy. And then he went on to break all the records.
When Di Maria scored that goal, I thought we're back. We're going to be unbelievable. Because that was when he put the foot. He just, I think, went Falcao, Van Persie, Di Maria. We'll put Rooney on as well. And we're like,
and that altered his thinking, didn't it?
And that was never a foul, by the way. Jamie Vardy fouled Raphael.
Yeah.
He pushed him over.
Anyway, we don't want to turn this into nostalgia TV. Otherwise, me and Steele have to start talking about the 1991 European Cup Winners' Cup final, and nobody wants that. James, I'll go over to you. Leicester, when you look at the Leicester team, who are the players that you really worry about? I mean, is it, again, I don't mean to repeat myself, but he is the main man. Is it all about Jamie Vardy, or do you think there's other quality there that can cause us problems?
Well, yeah, I mean, it could be quite an easy game in the same way that United started one Cup Winners' Cup was quite an easy one after beating Montpellier and Legia Warsaw to reach the final in the Hungarian side. So I think, look, I mean, ultimately, that Johnny Evans, there's a reason why we sold him in the first place. I think people forget that. I mean, United wouldn't have sold him if he was like a world-class ball-playing Maldini centre-back. So he's probably good, but he's probably not as good as people say it is, because, people love to talk about underrated players that no one else is speaking about. So, yeah, okay, he's quite good, but he's nowhere near. I don't think he's as good as Maguire. I don't think Soyuncu is as good as Maguire. You saw the mistake he made the other day. I think, obviously, they do pose a bit of a threat. I mean, they were third, 12 points clear, but their form recently is been almost relegation form. I mean, if you look at the recent games they've played, they've looked really off it. I think Rodgers as well, he's got a track record of sort of bottling things when he sort of has to win things. He doesn't exactly have a great record of getting teams over the line when it comes to championships or whatever. So I think, to be honest, Leicester are they're going to have as much pressure as United are, because they've never been in this position before. They won the Premier League once by chance, and now they're going to qualify. It's not going to...
By chance.
Yeah, but it was a weird season, that, wasn't it? It was.
It almost doesn't count.
How many points did they get at the top? It was like 4 or something.
I think it was 4. It was 4 points.
It was up there with us in '97. It's one of those ones where you just get given the title.
So this one doesn't count either.
Yeah, the least
that
rubbish.
point as well about that you said there, James, about people liking to see the player that no one else notices how good they are. So Soyuncu is a perfect example of that, where he's actually better than Maguire, guys. He's not better than Maguire. He's not a bad defender. So he gets told he's better too. I know United fans.
Yeah,
he's came from a league that no one's really known much about, and he's gone, I told you, I watched every single standard Liège game last season. He's the best player ever, and it's just so people can score points on Twitter. Really, I think that's why people are big into players like him, because Maguire, he signed for United for, what was it, 80, 90 million pounds. I don't think he's probably not as good as that in terms of his value as a centre-back, but he's still a good player. I mean, he's improved our defence massively. If you look at how many goals we've shipped this season compared to last season, it's a lot smaller. So I think same thing with De Gea, and people love to have a go at him. And okay, he's not been great this season, but he's still on his day. I mean, we saw it against West Ham. He's still a good keeper when he decides to show up.
Very, very true. Agree with all that. Baggers, you were making a point, I think, when you were chatting the other day about, was it Leicester Spurs? That could be almost like a blueprint if you look at that game and the way that Leicester went for Spurs and got counter-attacks and we're all at sea. Do you think that, as you mentioned the other day, is the way that we could win this game?
I think Spurs didn't look that good in that game. They just literally soaked up a lot of pressure, and it was very Mourinho-esque. It was very classic Mourinho of just, don't worry, we're in control of this, and that's what I'm hoping United need to do this week. That I think that what Leicester have really missed and it's really shown is that how good James Maddison actually is. I think that a lot of people have underrated him in the start of this season. Maybe he's not done the ridiculous stats that he should have done, but I think as soon you've seen him come out of that team, and players like Perez, Harvey Barnes, all those kind of players look a little bit worse now that there's not someone like James Maddison playing the passes into them. And also Jamie Vardy as well. I think Maddison made that team tick. I think Tielemans looked a lot worse since Maddison's been out of it, and then Ndidi, very good defensive player, but doesn't have that range that Maddison has, and I think that he's the big miss for them massively. And I think that the way that they sat back, that defence they put out Wes Morgan, Johnny Evans, and there's another lad that's come into that team. I think it's Bennett has played in that team. On the counter, looked really poor and looked very, very slow. And with whether it is Martial and just Greenwood, whether it's Martial, Rashford, Greenwood, any of those mix of players, we have to be looking to get him behind that 3 if they play the 3, because they have looked shaky. And I think, like I said, Harry Kane managed to get him behind, Son managed to get him behind. It only takes a couple of decent passes, and I do think we'll get him catch him on the counter attack. Yeah,
if we see a one-on-one sprint with, one of the reasons I picked Rashford is just because of his pace and how well he carries the ball. Yep. If you see a one-on-one sprint with Rashford or Martial against Wes Morgan, that's not even...
I love the commentators always when they talk about Wes Morgan will say, Wes Morgan, he'll have to use his experience for this game because he's running through treacle. That's all he's got is his experience. Yeah. And we know, obviously, a few years ago it did help him win a title.
But on the other hand, though, in defence of Wes Morgan, if we get in a position where we've got loads of the ball and we're chipping crosses into the box, he does a certain job. Not get a goal. Yeah. So we have to orchestrate this and draw them into traps so we can attack them in the most effective way possible. If we see Leicester sitting back, playing on the counter-attack, with us chipping balls onto Martial's head and he's got Wes Morgan, holding him on the floor and heading the ball away, we'll really struggle.
Yeah, we can't do that. We can't do that.
Their hands. We'll move on finally to the predictions. James, I'll start with you. How's this going to pan out, mate?
I think, like I said earlier, it's going to be really tight. I think there's only going to be a goal or two in it. I think there's so much riding on it, and I hate to say this because it isn't, but it is basically silverware for Solskjaer in terms of the board's perspective. I mean, if he wins this one game, there's so much money riding on it. So I think it would probably be a bit inexperienced to both managers if they both decided to, play 3-4-3 fluid attacking football and it ends in 4-3 or whatever. So I think it's probably going to be 1-0 to either side, and I think it's going to be very tight because I think, although United would probably be a better team, there's not really much in it in terms of sides on paper. So I think United, if they play their best, they'll win. We beat Leicester early on in the season, and we're better against the top sides. It's the Southamptons and the West Hams that we struggle against. So if everyone shows up and we don't look like we're sort of really unfit, and if we get the basics right in terms of not passing the ball around the back, because that's another annoying thing that I've noticed as well with Maguire and whoever it is, or whether it's Lindelof. They're just not good enough. They're not ball-playing defenders. It creates this sort of thing where, on that high press, like I was talking about earlier, it just invites pressure onto our defence. So if we stop doing that, then I think we've got a decent chance of winning, to be honest, because Martial, Rashford, Greenwood, on the counter-attack, they're devastating. I mean, you saw it the other week against the likes of Southampton, against the likes of Villa. They're just almost unstoppable, really.
Take that. I'll take any sort of victory. Baggers are going to you. What's the score going to be?
I'm going to go 2-1 United, and we're going to score 2 first, and then they're going to get one back and make it nervy. That's how it's going to go. I'm hoping for.
Nervy? United and nervy? Surely not. Final
2-1.
day. We were thinking about this when you chatting. When's the last time United have gone into the final day?
11-12.
2012.
2012.
Was that
the last time it's mattered? As
It's mattered in terms of this result.
We need to win this to get some.
Actually, no. The last game of the season.
Go.
In 2015, I think it was, when we drew or lost to West Ham the game before. If we won and City lost to Swansea, we would have got top 4, I think.
Right.
Right, there you go. 2015. I'm not going to argue with James Jones.
2016 it was actually.
2016.
It was Van Gaal's last season.
Get a grip, Alex.
So we had a chance of top 4. I thought we were well out of top 4.
It's one of them where we had to.
City had to lose to Swansea. Get that.
Right, okay.
So this is the last time it was in our hands on the last day.
Yeah, I just realised then what you said. Right. How the mighty have fallen. What do you think it's going to be?
What, Swansea? They're back in the playoffs.
Well, this is it. Hey?
I'm going to go 2-0 United. I reckon that Leicester's been one of the few teams of the top team. I know that we've beaten a lot of top teams recently, but every time we seem to play them, and this is me saying this has no bearing on what happens tomorrow, so I'll say it. Every time we seem to play them, we seem to just be way better than them. It feels like
better.
For some reason Leicester, of all those top teams,
better.
we just seem to outclass them, and I think we're going to see the same again tomorrow. I think we're better than we have been. I think they're just as knackered, as scared as we are, and as much as we've dropped points to West Ham and Southampton or whatever. They're like James said, they're relegation form very much. So what, they've had a week off. They're 3 months off, and they were still crap when they came back.
This is the attitude I like. So what? Way better.
I think we're a better team than them. I think that we've got players who are more used to doing this sort of thing than they have. I know that we're not that experienced, but we've got Paul Pogba who's won titles. We've got Bruno Fernandes who's played in Champions League. These sorts of players. I think we'll beat them 2-0. I think it won't be that comfortable as it's comfortable as that sounds. I think 1-0 and then a goal on the counter attack. 2-0.
So you're on 2-0, 1-0, 2-1.
What are you saying, Jay?
Well, I bumped into that United family before, and their daughter said 2-1, Jessica. So I'm going to stick with her. I'm going to go with 2-1 to United. I hope she's right. Yeah, any result. Do you know what?
Anything.
And even if Wolves
if we
lose and Wolves beat Chelsea,
I
don't care.
That might be my favourite result.
I just want us to get Champions League football.
If Wolves beat Chelsea and we draw, that's my ideal result.
And if we draw 0-0,
yeah,
and we pass the ball around for half an hour because they're 4-0 down to Wolves, that's the ideal.
I think it'll be 2-0, but ideally we would draw and Chelsea would lose. That's the ideal.
There's so many scenarios. It's going to be one of those where it's going to be like, at half time, this is the top 4. After 60 minutes, this was the top 4. And at 90 minutes, this was the top 4.
Can you believe it? Within 90 minutes, it all changed.
Oh, I hate all those things. James, where can people find you?
Well, go to my Twitter because I'm a freelancer, so I'm on here and I'm on about like 6 other things. So it's just easier. If any employees are watching this, then just follow me on Twitter because I post stuff on there. But my Wakelet profiles in there. So if you want to have a look at all the other stuff I've been doing some stuff for the Football Pink, and I do a radio show as well, 3 till 6 every Saturday, Bro Radio 98.1 FM, and we're on online as well. So have a listen to that if you've got absolutely nothing else to do with your life.
Well, you've sold it. You sold that to me.
What a trailer, James!
I tell you what, you've done a lot for someone so young. You know where to find Joe, birthday boy. If you've got to send him a birthday wish, make sure you do. It's at Joe Smith 93.
Yeah, and if you want to send me a birthday card, send it to PO Box 816141.
Don't really.
I haven't got a PO Box.
People are going to be sending that now
I ain't got
and
a
then
PO
complaining, saying he had me over. Baggers, you know where to find him as well.
Yeah.
He'll be doing. What are you doing? Match? You doing your pre-match
I'll be doing
stuff?
pre-match. I'll be there at half time.
Are you having? Is Andy Tate doing a team talk?
We're going to be thrown to you
Tate's doing
all
the
the
team.
time, and you're giving us the around the grounds.
Oh yes.
You've
I'm
got to
looking
sit
forward
there
to
the
that
whole
now.
time.
I
Alex,
could
around
do
the grounds.
Around the
Thank
grounds.
you very much. I'm here.
There's been a goal.
Yeah. Goal at Southampton. Who's it
let's,
for?
let's hope you're more intelligent than Merson and Atletis. Yeah, do us all.
Yes. Matt Letizia
I am.
doesn't
In your
believe in
face, Letizia. Well
doesn't
said.
believe in
Let's
seatbelts.
Let's not.
Flat
let's
earther,
not go on
Mr.
the bloody
Letizia.
hell.
Eh? He's worse than Ronaldo with his
Another
conspiracy
time with
theories.
seatbelts and Matt Letizia.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
We'll be here, obviously, on the match. We'll have the watch along. Baggers will have all the half-time and post-match stuff. We'll have the fan cams. We'll have the review. So make sure you tune into that. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe. I've been Jay. That's been Joe. That's been Baggers. That's been James. This has been the Stretford Paddock Leicester City preview. Thanks for watching.